The galaxy had many stories of great empires that rose to power and then fell into dust. Among them, the Zerothian Empire was once the brightest star. For centuries, their ships ruled the space lanes. Their laws stretched across worlds, and their towers reached the skies of countless planets. But power built on pride and cruelty never lasted long. The empire collapsed, leaving only ruins, silence, and broken memories. In the shadow of a shattered citadel where once a council ruled the stars, a small figure lay buried under stones and twisted metal. She was an alien girl, young in years but carrying the sorrow of a dying world. Her name was Karena. By the standards of her own people, she was called ugly. Her skin had uneven shades of gray, her eyes were too large, and her voice had a rough sound. The Empire had judged her unworthy, and when the final war came, they left her behind like forgotten debris. For many days she remained trapped beneath the ruins. The nights on that broken planet were cold, and the days were filled with red dust storms that swept across the ground. Her strength faded, and only her will kept her alive. She dreamed of voices, but when she opened her eyes, she saw only darkness and falling stones. Far away, a human ship drifted into the system. Its captain was Elias Ward, a man who had spent much of his life exploring forgotten places. He was not part of any great fleet, nor was he a soldier anymore. Once he had served in wars, but now he lived as a seeker, traveling with his ship, the Resolute. He believed that ruins held more truth than new palaces, and so he searched where others feared to go. When the Resolute entered orbit around the dead world, Elias saw endless wreckage. Cities were broken, towers lay like broken spears, and giant machines rusted in silence. The scanner showed little energy, no sign of life, yet faint readings came from the central citadel. It was weak, like a heartbeat barely there. Curiosity pulled him closer. He landed the ship on a cracked landing field. The air was thin but breathable. The ground was covered with the skeletons of machines and the bones of fallen warriors. He walked carefully, his boots crunching on glass and metal fragments. His eyes, sharp and restless, searched for answers in every ruin. Then he heard something. At first it was only the wind through hollow towers, but then, beneath the dust and stone, he caught a sound. A faint cry, weak and broken. It was not the voice of an echo, but the voice of someone alive. Elias paused, hand on the grip of his tool, and listened again. The cry returned. It was a plea, soft and tired. Elias pushed forward. He passed through the broken gate of the citadel, climbing over fallen beams. The walls still carried faded paintings of the Empire's glory, images of conquest, soldiers in shining armor, and banners of victory. But now those images were scratched and broken, meaningless in the silence. Near the throne chamber, rubble had collapsed from above. Elias scanned the stones with his device. Beneath the weight of shattered columns there was movement, weak but present. He dropped his pack and began to dig. The stones were heavy and the dust choked him, but he worked with steady hands. Hours passed, his strength tested by the stubborn ruins. Finally, he uncovered a face. Large eyes blinked at him, filled with both fear and disbelief. The girl beneath the stones stared at him as though she could not trust what she saw. Elias leaned closer. "You're alive," he said in a calm voice. "Stay still. I'll get you out." Karena tried to speak, but her voice was cracked and weak. The words came out rough, almost like a whisper of sand. Elias did not understand her language, but he understood the tone. Fear, exhaustion, and a plea for help. Piece by piece, he freed her from the ruins. At last, he lifted the broken beam that pinned her leg. She cried out in pain, but the relief on her face showed she was still holding on to life. He carried her out of the dust, step by careful step, until they reached the open air where the Resolute waited. Karena's appearance was strange to human eyes. Her skin had rough patches like stone, and her body was thinner than it should have been, starved by hunger. Yet Elias did not flinch. To him she was not ugly nor strange. She was alive, and that was enough. He brought her aboard his ship and placed her on a medical bed. The ship's systems scanned her, showing low energy, broken bones, and dehydration. Elias gave her water slowly, careful not to harm her further. Her eyes followed every move he made, still filled with doubt. "Why, help?" she whispered in broken Galactic common. It was a tongue few remembered, but she had learned fragments from the old Empire schools. Elias sat by her side. "Because no one deserves to be left in ruins," he answered. His voice was steady, without hesitation. Karena closed her eyes, fighting both pain and tears. She had seen her people abandon her without looking back. She had watched their ships fly away, leaving her under the collapsing towers. And now a stranger, an alien by her people's measure, had risked his life to free her. For a long time there was silence in the ship, broken only by the soft hum of its engines. Outside, the planet lay in ruins, a graveyard of an empire that once thought it would last forever. Inside, two lives so different in form and story had crossed paths in a way neither expected. Elias looked out the window at the ruins below. He knew he had found more than just broken stones. He had found a story hidden in the eyes of the girl he had saved. Karenna, weak but alive, whispered one more word before sleep took her. "White human?" Elias did not answer at once. He only placed a blanket over her fragile form and whispered almost to himself, "Because we see worth where others see none." The first night aboard the Resolute passed in quiet. Outside, the galaxy was vast, cold, and filled with dangers. But for the girl who had been left to die, and for the man who had chosen to save her, a new journey was about to begin. When Karenna woke again, she found herself in a place she did not know. The hum of the engines was steady, the air was warm, and the ceiling above her glowed softly with white light. For a moment, fear rushed through her. She tried to sit up, but pain struck her leg and she fell back with a cry. Elias appeared at her side, moving quickly from the control station. He carried a small tray with food packs and water. His eyes were calm, his steps steady. "You need rest," he said firmly. "Your bones are not yet healed." Karenna studied him with suspicion. Humans were not common in the Empire. She had heard stories. Some said they were too bold, others said they were reckless. But none had ever spoken of them as saviors. She frowned, her large eyes narrowing. "Why save me?" she whispered in broken Galactic common. Elias placed the tray near her and sat down. "Because you were alive. That's reason enough." Karenna wanted to believe, but a lifetime of rejection weighed on her. Her own people had left her. Why would an outsider show kindness? She remained silent, refusing to touch the food Elias noticed. He sighed and opened one of the packs himself. He took a bite, chewed, and then calmly set the pack in front of her again. "It's safe. Eat or you won't have strength to argue with me." Slowly, almost unwillingly, she took the pack and tasted it. The food was strange, sweeter than anything she remembered, but her empty stomach welcomed it. As she ate, her eyes stayed fixed on Elias, as if she expected him to suddenly reveal some hidden plan. Hours passed. The ship drifted away from the ruined planet, moving through silent space. Elias worked on repairs, checked navigation, and adjusted the scanners. Karenna lay on the medical bed, her body weak but her mind restless. At last she spoke again. "You're kind humans. You want treasure, weapons, secrets of empire?" Elias turned to her, wiping dust from his hands. "I want knowledge, yes. Ruins carry lessons, but I don't want weapons. I've seen enough of them." His voice grew quieter. "I've seen what they do." Karenna tilted her head. She could see something in his eyes, a weight, a memory he carried but did not share. She wondered what kind of wars humans had fought. When Elias sat again, Karenna finally told him her name. "Karenna," she said softly, placing a hand over her chest. "Last child of Zerothian halls." Elias nodded. "Elias Ward, explorer, or maybe just a wanderer now." Their eyes met, and for the first time a small bridge formed between them. The days that followed were filled with tension and small steps of trust. Elias showed her how the ship worked, pointing out the control panels, the engines, and the storage units. Karenna listened with careful attention. Though she was weak, her mind was sharp. She began to ask questions about the ship's systems, surprising Elias with how much she understood. "You studied engineering?" Elias asked one evening as he watched her sketch a rough diagram of his ship's reactor. Karenna hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly as she drew. "In Empire, only best were taught. I was not best. But I listened. I remembered." Elias realized then that she carried knowledge she had never been allowed to use. It explained the brightness in her eyes when she spoke of systems, codes, and designs. She had been treated as unworthy, yet she had absorbed everything around her. Still, trust did not come easily. Karenna often turned away when Elias tried to ask about her people. Pain was written on her face, a wound deeper than any broken bone. At night, when the lights dimmed, Elias sometimes heard her whisper in her own language, soft, sorrowful words that he did not understand. One night, The peace was broken. Alarms blared through the Resolute. Elias ran to the cockpit and scanned the screens. A small group of scavenger ships was approaching. They had picked up his trail, likely drawn by the energy signature of his landing on the ruined world. Trouble, Elias muttered. He turned on the defense shields. Karenna limped into the cockpit, gripping the doorway for support. Scavengers, she said in a bitter tone. She knew their kind well. They were like carrion birds feeding on the corpses of empires. The scavenger ships hailed them. A rough voice crackled through the speakers. Human ship, surrender your cargo. We know you carry Zerothian tech and a survivor. Hand them over and maybe we let you live. Elias's jaw tightened. He did not answer. Instead, he prepared the ship for evasive flight. Karenna grabbed his arm. You cannot fight them. Too many. I don't plan to fight, Elias said, but I won't hand you over either. The scavengers opened fire, blasts of energy flashing against the Resolute's shields. The ship shook, lights flickering. Elias pulled the controls, diving between asteroids that floated nearby. The scavengers followed, their weapons tearing through stone and dust. Karenna watched the displays, her sharp mind calculating. She pointed at one cluster of asteroids. There, fly-through gap. Their ship's too wide. They will crash. Elias glanced at her, surprised, but trusted her instinct. He pulled the ship sharply into the gap. The Resolute slipped through, scraping past rocks, but two scavenger ships struck the asteroids and exploded in fire. The others pulled back, wary of chasing further. Elias used the moment to fire a single torpedo. It struck a drifting rock, shattering it into a storm of fragments that forced the scavengers to retreat. When the danger passed, Elias leaned back, breathing hard. Karenna was gripping the seat beside him, her eyes wide but filled with something new. Respect. You trusted me, she said softly. You earned it, Elias replied. Later, when the ship was calm again, they sat together in the quiet mess hall. Karenna's leg was still weak, but she carried herself with more strength than before. You risked everything, she said. Why, you could leave me. Scavengers would stop. Elias looked at her directly. I don't abandon people. Not anymore. There was something final in his tone, something shaped by his past. Karenna did not press further. Instead, she lowered her gaze and whispered, In my people's eyes, I was less than nothing. You see me different, Elias gave a small nod. Your people were blind. I see someone worth saving. Her throat tightened, and for the first time since her rescue, Karenna smiled faintly. A small, fragile smile, but real. The alliance between them was still fragile. Karenna carried fear and doubt. Elias carried caution and scars of his own. Yet after the battle with the scavengers, both understood something important. They needed each other. Karenna had knowledge of the Empire, secrets hidden in her memory. Elias had the strength and will to protect. Together they could face what lay beyond, but neither of them knew that their actions had already drawn attention. The scavenger survivors spread word. A human had taken a Zerothian survivor from the ruins. And in the shadows of distant stars, greater powers began to take interest. The fragile alliance was only the beginning. The galaxy was wide, but news traveled fast. The scavengers who survived the asteroid fight did not keep silent. Their words spread through shadow markets, across pirate stations, and into the ears of rival factions. They said a human explorer had taken a Zerothian survivor, one who carried knowledge of the fallen empire. To many, this was more valuable than gold. Inside the Resolute, Elias did not yet know how far the rumor had traveled. But he knew one thing. The scavengers would not stop. Others would come. His ship had survived one fight, but if fleets began to chase them, survival would not be easy. Karenna felt it too. She sat by the window staring at the stars that streaked by as the ship moved through faster than light travel. Her eyes were thoughtful, her body still weak but growing stronger. They will come, she said quietly. Not just scavengers, others. Many want what I carry. Elias looked at her from the pilot's chair. And what do you carry, Karenna? She hesitated. For days she had avoided the truth, but now she could not hide forever. Her hands clenched the edge of the seat. I remember things, she said. Codes, maps, fragments of knowledge. When I was young, they tested me. I was not chosen, but I heard. I listened. The Empire's secrets, they thought I was too weak, too useless. But my mind remembered. Elias frowned. And they left you behind because of that? Her voice dropped, rough with pain. They left me because I was not perfect. My face, my voice, my form. It did not fit their dream of beauty. They wanted pure heirs, not broken ones. I was nothing to them. Elias's jaw tightened. He had seen many empires fall in his travels, but cruelty always left the same scars. He leaned forward, voice steady. You are not nothing, not to me. Not anymore. Karenna blinked at him, uncertain how to answer. She turned back to the stars, but his words stayed with her like a quiet flame. Their journey continued. They stopped at remote stations to gather supplies, always careful, always quiet. But even in the farthest corners, whispers followed them. Elias noticed strangers watching too closely, traders asking too many questions. On one such station, Karenna walked beside him, her cloak drawn tight around her. The air was filled with the smell of oil, smoke, and food. Merchants shouted, ships landed and took off, and mechanical beasts carried heavy cargo. Yet under the noise, Elias sensed danger. He turned to her. Stay close. Don't speak to anyone. She nodded, but her eyes scanned the stalls with curiosity. To her, everything was new. Alien foods, human traders, machines she had never touched. For a moment, she almost forgot the danger. But then she saw the way some people stared at Elias. Not with respect, but with recognition. They know, she whispered. Elias followed her gaze. A group of armored figures was moving through the crowd, their eyes fixed on him. He grabbed Karenna's arm gently but firmly. We're leaving, now. They hurried back to the ship, weaving through alleys. But the armored men followed, their steps heavy, their weapons visible. When Elias and Karenna reached the Resolute, the chase broke into a fight. The men fired, blasts of energy striking the walls around them. Elias pushed Karenna behind cover and returned fire with his sidearm. He did not aim to kill, only to slow them down. His shots forced them to take cover, buying him time to open the ship's ramp. Run! He shouted. Karenna ran as best as her leg allowed, her heart pounding. Elias covered her until she was inside, then jumped aboard and sealed the hatch. The ship's engines roared, lifting them into the air as enemy fire struck its shields. Through the cockpit window, Karenna saw the armored men grow smaller below. She felt both fear and relief, her hands trembling. They knew you, she said. Elias nodded grimly, and soon, more will know. That night, as the ship drifted in quiet space, Elias studied the star maps. Karenna joined him, bringing a small data slate. You said you remembered things, he said. Can you show me? She sat beside him and began to draw rough coordinates on the slate. These are places I remember. Storage vaults, stations. One of them holds records, the last records of the Empire's weapon. The weapon that destroyed everything. Elias's eyes narrowed. A weapon? Karenna nodded. It was too strong. Even they feared it, in their hunger for power. They built something they could not control. That is why the Empire fell. Elias leaned back in his chair. His mind raced with possibilities. If such a weapon still existed, it could threaten not just one world, but many. And you know where it is? He asked, her voice grew quiet. Not exactly. But I know where to begin. The trail starts in the Vault of Stars, hidden inside a dead system. Elias rubbed his chin. Then we'll go there. But it won't be easy. If others are chasing us now, they'll chase harder when they learn about this. Karenna's eyes lowered. Then perhaps I should not stay with you. If I leave, they may stop. Elias turned sharply toward her. No, that's not how it works. They won't stop. They'll hunt you until they use you or kill you. You stay with me. We face this together. She looked at him, stunned by the certainty in his voice. No one had ever spoken for her like that before. Slowly, she nodded. Days turned into weeks as they followed the trail of forgotten star systems. They passed through nebulae where lightning storms danced across gas clouds, through derelict battlefields where old warships drifted like ghosts, and through silent worlds covered in ice. Each place tested their patience and their strength, and always the hunters followed. Sometimes scavenger fleets tried to ambush them. Sometimes mercenaries appeared at the edge of sensors. Once, a pirate dreadnought gave chase across an entire sector, forcing Elias to use every trick he knew to escape. During these chases, Karenna proved herself again and again. She read old signals, decrypted codes, and guided the Resolute through paths no human map had recorded. Her memory was a treasure, and without it they would have been lost many times. In return, Elias protected her with courage and skill. He fought when needed, negotiated when he could, and never once considered leaving her behind. Slowly, Karena's mistrust began to fade. At night, she sometimes joined him on the deck where they watched the stars together. "You humans," she said once, her voice softer than he had ever heard. "Your strength is not in weapons. It is here." She placed a hand over her chest. "In heart," Elias gave a small smile. "Maybe, or maybe we're just too stubborn to quit." She laughed, a sound rare but bright. For a moment, the darkness of the galaxy felt lighter, but danger grew closer. One evening, as the Resolute neared the vault of stars, Elias picked up a signal. A fleet was behind them, larger than any they had faced before. Karena's face grew pale. "They know where we go. They will not stop now." Elias tightened his grip on the controls. "Then we won't stop either. Whatever waits in that vault, we'll face it together." The chase across the stars had led them here to the edge of truth, and beyond the next jump, the legacy of a fallen empire waited to be uncovered. The vault of stars was hidden in a dying system, a cluster of small, barren planets circling a dim red sun. Its location had been kept secret for centuries, recorded only in fragments scattered across old Zerothian archives. Karena guided the Resolute carefully, navigating through asteroid belts and decaying debris fields. As they approached the vault, the structure became visible. An enormous station carved from black metal and crystal, half buried in ice and dust. Its surface was scarred by ancient battles, and cracks glowed faintly with the energy of failing systems. Elias and Karena exchanged a glance. Both knew the dangers that waited inside. "This place is not safe," Elias said as he maneuvered the ship closer. "But we must find answers." Karena nodded, her hands resting on the console. "The Empire left many traps. They wanted to keep this knowledge safe, even from themselves. We must be careful." The ship landed on a landing platform that had survived centuries of neglect. The air was thin but breathable, and the gravity was weak. Elias and Karena exited cautiously, weapons ready. The silence was heavy, broken only by the crunch of broken glass under their boots. The interior of the vault was vast, filled with towering machines and data cores that hummed faintly. Old holographic projections flickered, showing the Empire in its glory. Ships at war, leaders in council, and machines capable of destruction beyond imagination. Karena's eyes grew wide as she recognized fragments of her past. This is what they wanted to hide," she whispered. "Everything. Their pride, their weapons, their mistakes." Elias studied the projections. He could see the patterns of control, the design of weapons, and the sheer scale of the Empire's ambition. "They built too much," he said quietly. "Even a small mistake could destroy worlds." Karena nodded. "It did. It destroyed everything. Their fear of weakness, their desire for control, it led to their fall." They walked deeper into the vault, navigating through corridors filled with broken defense systems and frozen security drones. Karena led Elias to a central chamber, where a massive holographic table displayed the locations of the Empire's strongest weapons. "One of these is still active," she said. "They called it the Heart of Zeroth. It could destroy planets' entire fleets. Only the key could control it, and I carry that key." Elias looked at her in shock. "You mean you can activate it?" She lowered her gaze, shame and fear mixing with determination. "I never wanted this. I never asked for power. But if someone uses it wrong, it could destroy everything again." Their conversation was interrupted by a distant rumble. The ship's sensors picked up movement. Another fleet had arrived, larger and more organized than the scavengers before. Rival factions, pirates, and mercenaries had gathered, all drawn by the same rumor. A human carried a Zerothian survivor and knowledge of the Empire's last weapon. Karena's face turned pale. "They know. They came for me." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we fight smart, not blindly. We protect this knowledge and ensure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands." The first attack came swiftly. Ships fired from the space above, their energy blasts striking the vault's outer defenses. Inside, automated systems activated, triggering old security drones and energy barriers. The vault itself seemed to resist, protecting the secrets it held. Elias and Karena moved quickly, using the environment to their advantage. Karena deciphered security codes, disabling traps and opening corridors for escape. Elias fought alongside her, his weapons precise, aiming to delay the intruders without triggering the Empire's destructive mechanisms. Amid the chaos, Karena discovered an old control panel. Her fingers moved over the interface with skill, bringing up records of the Empire's mistakes, revealing why the weapon had been abandoned. It was too powerful, unstable, and bound to destroy the Empire from within. "They were afraid of themselves," she whispered. "They left me behind not because of my face, but because I carried the key. They feared what I could unlock." Elias looked at her, admiration and concern mixing in his eyes. "Then we make sure no one unlocks it. Not them, not anyone else." The battle reached its climax when a group of intruders breached the inner chamber. Elias and Karenna stood side by side defending the vault. Her mind raced as she activated old defenses, turning the Empire's own technology against the attackers. Energy barriers, drones, and traps slowed the invaders, giving them the chance to escape deeper into the vault. Finally, after a tense standoff, Elias and Karenna sealed the main chamber. The attackers were forced to retreat, their ships damaged and morale broken. Breathing heavily, Karenna looked around at the ruins of her empire. "It is over," she said softly. "But the legacy, the mistakes, they remain." Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we ensure that legacy does not repeat. We take the knowledge and we use it to protect, not destroy." For the first time, Karenna felt a sense of purpose. The Empire had abandoned her, left her to die, but now she had a choice. She could follow the path of destruction they had set, or she could join this human who had seen her worth and use her knowledge to help others. Together, they left the vault, carrying what they had learned. The galaxy was still dangerous and enemies would follow. But the bond between human and alien had grown strong. They were no longer just survivor and rescuer. They were partners, united by a shared purpose. The flight from the Vault of Stars was tense. Karenna monitored the scanners, noting the movement of enemy fleets that still pursued them. Elias piloted the Resolute with precision, weaving through asteroid fields and slipping through narrow gaps that larger ships could not follow. "They are relentless," Karenna said. Her voice steady despite exhaustion. Elias nodded. "They believe power is everything. We know it isn't." As they jumped into a safer sector, Karenna reviewed the records they had recovered. Schematics, maps, and logs filled her data slate. Each fragment told the story of the Zerothian Empire. Pride, ambition, mistakes, and finally collapse. "This knowledge," she whispered, "it could rebuild empires or destroy them." Elias looked at her. "Then we make the right choice. We use it to protect, not to conquer." For days they traveled together, sharing responsibilities. Karenna's insight and Elias's experience made them an efficient team. She began to trust him more deeply, understanding that humans were not only strong in body but in spirit. Elias in turn admired her intellect and resilience, marveling at how someone abandoned and called ugly could possess such courage and wisdom. One day, they approached a system near a cluster of habitable planets. Reports indicated that a small colony was under threat from pirates who had learned of Karenna's presence. Elias and Karenna decided to intervene. Using the knowledge from the vault, Karenna identified weak points in the pirates' ships. Elias guided their approach, and together they disabled the pirate fleet without unnecessary destruction. The colonists hailed them as heroes. Karenna, shy and unsure, could hardly respond. Elias placed a protective hand on her shoulder, whispering, "This is the kind of power worth having. The power to protect, to save." As the days passed, Karenna's confidence grew. She no longer saw herself as abandoned or unworthy. She realized that her knowledge, her mind, and her courage were valuable. She began to see humans not as outsiders but as allies, creatures capable of both great strength and compassion. Their journey continued, taking them to forgotten systems, ruined colonies, and abandoned stations. Everywhere they applied the lessons of the fallen empire. They repaired infrastructure, warned systems of dangers, and used knowledge as a tool of protection. The galaxy slowly began to feel safer, thanks to the unlikely partnership of human and alien. One night, as they drifted near a glowing nebula, Karenna looked at Elias. "I was left to die, but you saved me. Not because of power, not because of reward, but because you saw worth where others did not." Elias smiled, a soft and tired expression. "It's what humans do. We see potential in those who others discard. That is our strength." Karenna placed a hand over hers. "Then maybe humanity is brighter than I thought." Elias chuckled. "And maybe aliens are smarter than humans if they remember what we forget." They laughed softly, the sound echoing in the quiet of the ship. For the first time in centuries, Karena felt hope, a sense of belonging, and the possibility of a new beginning. The galaxy was still vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. Enemies would always exist and threats would arise. But Karena and Elias knew one truth. Strength was not only in power or weapons, it was in compassion, trust, and courage. Together they became a symbol of hope. An abandoned girl and a human explorer showed the galaxy that even in darkness light could shine. They had turned the mistakes of an empire into lessons for the future. They had proven that humanity, caring, brave, and determined, could change the fate of the stars. As they moved onward, the stars stretched before them like an endless sea. Karena looked out at the galaxy and smiled. For the first time she was not alone, not hunted, and not afraid. She was alive, valued, and ready to face whatever came next, with a human by her side, and hope guiding her path. In the end, the message was clear. Where others saw weakness, a human saw worth, and together they could shape a brighter future for all.